If you are interested in starting your own podcast, we use Buzzsprout because it is simple and easy to use. Buzzsprout can get your show listed on every major platform while giving you the resources for a great podcast website, audio players that can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening to your podcast, and tools to promote your episodes. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and that is why over 100,000 podcasters are already subscribed to Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. Following the link in our episode descriptions lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you. So in return, you will receive a $20 Amazon gift card from Buzzsprout while signing up for a paid plan. Most importantly, every subscription through our link is always appreciated and helps support our show so we can continue delivering the quality content that you guys listen to. That being said, back to the show.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Junkies. I'm Andrew.
This is Joe.
And after a long absence, we've gotten back to our roots, core values. We're going to have a story review. For those of you who are new here, we like to go through classic stories, whether it's told it's classic by one of you or, something that we found either on the internet or from some other old heads that's considered a classic or, comic impactful story usually. We're reading one of those. This time around, it is Animal Man Volume 1 by Morrison, Truzog, and Hazelwood. This was kind of back in the late 80s, early 90s when this was kind of hitting its sweet spot. They're kind of bringing back Animal Man after about 30 or so years of obscurity, kind of pump some new life into the character. And this is, by all accounts, been considered one of the better revamps too, especially for a character that didn't have a large footprint. It's about 9 issues, at least the digital copy that we read. This is volume 1 of the first volume. I believe this is his first solo run ever, or first solo series at minimum. And this is about 9 issues. The first 4 are a pretty much self-contained story arc. I believe that this book was actually supposed to be like a limited series, but the first 4 issues did so well that they kind of, let the team go on and turn it into more of an ongoing. So the other 5 issues that kind of come after that are just more so character pieces, kind of more so one-offs, or, they kind of tied into other books at the time. So once we're going over those, if there's anything that feels like we're kind of missing stuff, it's because we don't have the full context of any stories for any of that. That being said, Animal Man Volume 1, Joe, do you want to start us off?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you pointing an issue 1 out to me at the store when we were hunting for comics. Bought that before reading this, and man, am I ever happy, because the first 4 issues is probably what will go in the most depth, when reviewing this, because it's some pretty good stuff. So issue 1, we're quickly introduced to Buddy Baker and his powers as the story begins with Buddy in his neighbor's tree trying to rescue a cat. He's able to grab the cat from the tree, but his weight breaks one of the branches that he's standing on and absorbs the cat's reflexes to land on his feet without getting hurt. His neighbor is in complete awe that he's able to do that, but Buddy's just pumped that he could help out by rescuing the cat. So he goes home to talk to his wife about his aspirations of becoming a Justice Leaguer, and his wife treats it like a pipe dream and wants him to kind of focus on paying bills and other, tasks of being a husband and having a family. But shortly into that conversation, we're now introduced to his son and daughter. After being introduced to the family, the story kind of alternates, though, with another character outside of the main city, and he's making his way into the city. The character mentions hearing the screaming of monkeys and his hate for the city, but finally makes it into an alleyway where a criminal is trying to rob him. The dude is quite the freak of nature. We still don't know who this character is, but he throws the robber so far into the alleyway that his face smears the sidewalk and ends up killing the criminal. So he mentions the screams get louder and flees the scene.
Yeah, and that introduces us to our big bad for the arc. They are mired in the shadows this entire time. So, for some old heads or people who've already read this before, the eventual character reveal tends to be quite obvious. And even me having some of that knowledge didn't even put 2 and 2 together until a few more issions in. But while all that's going down, I wasn't sure. I was reading about it. I was like, who is this character? And then they kept referring to this character as the Beast, and I was just like, is this like a blind spot in my memory on DC characters of this time? But in time, it all made a lot of sense, especially if you like to dig in the back issue bins. But while that's all going on, Buddy kind of has resolve. As you mentioned, he was talking with his wife, Ellen, and she's the one doing storyboards and paying the bills and, basically almost being a single parent, but with having Buddy there as moral support. But he finds some resolve. He's like an eternal optimist, even though he's a bit of a goof and, he doesn't exactly have the best luck. And he's, like a part-time hero, partially retired even. But he decides to get back into action. He's going to be the man. And in order to do so, he has to test out his powers because it's been so long since he's been using them with any regularity. So he's going out, he's swimming in a lake, or not a lake, a river with a strong undertow. And Ellen shows up and she's talking to some old fisherman guy. And she's like, no, I haven't seen your husband around here anywhere. And she's like, oh, yeah, he's swimming. He's like, there's no way he could be swimming. The undertow's nuts. And then out of nowhere, Buddy just pops his head up and he's like, how fast was I? How'd I do? And he got like a good, I think, half-hour pace or so. So that's where we kind of find out that as far as his power limitations, it seems that he gets about a half hour or so, give or take, of animal absorption powers before he would need a recharge. From there, we do also see him testing out some other powers. So we find out that he can fly again as well. He's able to run, close to 75 miles per hour when they're out in the desert. And he's a goof the whole time. So he does like the little roadrunner, like meep while he's testing it out. So, I like that he's like a goofy dude. And a lot of this is to not only get into, being a superhero again, but the fame and notoriety that would come with it. So that Buddy can pay the bills. He can be recognized as, making a difference and stuff like that. And his buddy Roger says that they can get him on TV, which, throughout this series, he uses TV as like a means to answer a lot of different issues, but it seldom really works out. And they usually use him as kind of more of like the butt end of a joke, but he's just like glad to be there.
Yeah, there's a few references to getting on TV, even late in this volume one, which is pretty
That's
funny.
hilarious.
Yeah, we'll get to it later. But yeah, no, he is funny, like with the meep jokes, but he also doesn't say a lot either. So when he does, it's pretty good stuff. And the Rogers situation's kind of funny too. His neighbor just talking about it'd be like you and me in this podcast, but we could do it. But no, they cheers, they have a beer, and then the story kind of goes back to the mysterious guy that fled the alley, and he's also drinking a beverage, so it's kind of a cool transition there. But this beverage is like a flask, like a science flask, which makes me believe that's kind of where dude draws his strength. But well, at that time anyway. But he's breaking into Star Labs now. Buddy gets his first call to be a hero, puts on a jacket over his superhero costume because he's a little insecure about his his fit, but he tells his wife to wish him luck and heads on over to Star Labs. Right after Buddy leaves, his wife talks to Roger's wife, who's their neighbor, and Roger's wife tells Buddy's wife to tread with caution because Roger's usually over his head and probably wouldn't make for a good manager, and says he only shoots blanks, which is funny and also another smooth transition because then we see a panel of some guy shooting a gun, and that character actually does show up later in the story too, so something important to note. But I guess to conclude issue one, Buddy is now at Star Labs and he's talking to the lead scientist, and the lead scientist says that they've been working on a vaccine for the AIDS virus, and that's why they've been experimenting on monkeys. Buddy asks him why they would need a superhero for like a break-in situation, so the scientist takes Buddy down to a room that couldn't have been accessed by a normal burglar to show him a pile of monkeys that are fused together in glowing gold.
The blob of monkeys is hilarious, even though it's not funny. But it's just like there was like a blank page, and then there's just a blob of monkeys, and I was just like, okay. And that leads us honestly right into issue two because they're still standing there, and he's like, "What the hell's this blob of monkeys?" He's like, "I guess you guys aren't really in the business of making crazy monkey blobs, huh?" And they find out that someone broke in and did this, and it turns out it was like a giant 8-foot cockroach thing. So he's talking with the scientists there, and he offers to track the creature, but obviously, and he asked to borrow a dog. So they show him to where they're clearly testing on dogs, and he's like, he absorbs the power of a dog, and he's like, which it could have been a healthy dog. He's like, what do you mean they are healthy? He's like, eh. But he starts to go track this giant cockroach creature, or whoever done this at this point. and he's off on his way. And this is where we kind of get into a couple of the other subplots that we mentioned prior. So there's the Beast, kind of just still reveling in how much they hate the city and basically all of their enemies. Just brooding away in the city somewhere. And then we also have this subplot where there's like some hillbilly hunting, and there's some real ne'er-do-well scoundrel type people trying to do animal abuse and shooting things that they don't really need to, and just kind of being generally nasty. So we see them for the first time.
Kind of gave me Preacher vibes, that cast of
Kind of
hunters.
did, yeah. It was that time, dude. It was sweet. But anywho, Animal Man's doing his thing. People see him roaming around the city, trying to track the creature. And for the first time, he gets approached for an autograph by a kid. But the kid ends up dissing him anyways because he thought that he was Aquaman by mistake. And the kid's like, and Animal Man's like, what a nice kid or whatever. Hopes he breaks a leg. And it's just hilarious as the kid's like skateboarding off because I just like Animal Man. He's like an everyman, real dude.
Very relatable because he's not like a millionaire, you know what I mean? He doesn't even have a secret identity. He's just kind of someone that shows up to work, and this is his work,
He's just a dude from the suburbs, really. And yeah, he's just trying to be good at his job.
Another funny scene right after that kid too. Superman also pays Buddy a hilariously short visit, but it quickly flashes over back to the villain, and he finds an alley rat to smush into a homeless guy. Which apparently this guy has the ability to fuse two things together, and Animal Man now has to fight like a rat man. Because they're in the city, there's not a lot of animals to draw powers from, but there's a prostitute with a pet praying mantis nearby, which is just enough for Animal Man to find strength in fighting the Rat Man. To conclude the issue, though, Animal Man and this rat continue to fight, but the rat finally gets the one up on Animal Man and rips his arm off. Animal Man passes out from the shock and loss of blood, but as he fades out, we see the rat and the man separating as well. And so they both kind of hit the ground. Additionally, Buddy's wife was playing in the woods with their kids, and we see the guy who shot the shotgun from earlier, and it looks like there's trouble brewing there as well.
Yeah, dude, perverted hillbillies with women in the woods. It's a bad subtext. But moving into issue 3, we get a little bit more light shed upon our villain here. So the Beast is coming to rescue Juba, the chimp who is sick. Juba was taken by the Myers, the scientist, and his squad. And then we also get the nickname drop for the Beast, who is the Bwana Beast, for those who don't know. Came out in Showcase issue 66 from the late 60s. Never given much run, but this was actually the perfect place to include him, which this kind of rules. But he does have a pretty sick nickname too on top of Bwana Beast, the White God of Kilimanjaro. It's pretty intimidating, especially when you got some giant buff dude in a loincloth and a red helmet running around. This guy is nuts. He's even getting shot while he's running around, and he just blocks out all the pain and everything because the dude's so pissed off. He got his chimp stolen. Pissed me off too. But Animal Man's powers are kind of moving beyond his control. He's still laying on the ground, armless, bleeding out, clearly about to die because he's not regenerative per se. But his powers kind of kick in as a backup generator almost. And out of his control, they start sensing out the nearest animals. And of course, as he's laying on the ground, there's earthworms underneath who do have regenerative properties. So he grows a whole new arm. No scars. It's actually better than his old arm. But, obviously being just a relatively normal guy, that'd make you feel a bit funky having a whole new arm grow back. And he's just like, oh man, I feel like shit. But, he doesn't waste too much time. He discovers the Rat Man kind of off in the distance, all kind of incapacitated and back to a relatively human form. And that's when he calls Star Labs. They show up and they, chuck him in the van too, because they're just like, yeah, we got to check everyone and everything that was just dealing with this. But while that's going on, Ellen's with the hillbillies. One of them's name is Ray. He knocks her out after being basically a pervert and also feeding a cat to his ravenous dogs. So this guy's just evil. And even his cronies are even kind of like, Ray, what's wrong with you? But those two subplots are still going in the background when we get a little bit more background on the Bwana Beast, which shows him really badass flying in on a winged lion during some African civil war. And his homie, I believe it's Ken, got shot right in front of him. He was his college buddy, and they both moved to Africa together after college. But obviously, the political turmoil there, one way or another, his friend ended up dying, and already pissed off Bawana Beast flies in on his winged lion thing and like decapitates the dictator that shot his friend. And then apparently everybody else who was even in the area just got massacred, especially by like birds and stuff that like blocked out the sun. Real post-apocalyptic vibe from like loincloth guy on a winged lion. So I mean that would be pretty terrifying. But that basically explains why he's gone mad. Because to this point, Bawana Beast was always a hero. And I mean, with his own justifications in this story, that's not to say he's not anymore, but this definitely isn't like typical of the character, at least up until this point. But yep, he finally attacks the lab himself, and we have the subplot going in the background of Maxine running home for help. So, there's a lot of like climax happening in this issue across the subplots. But this is when Myers finally spills the beans that they're making an anti-livestock germ weapon out of the anthrax virus that they have. And they're basically trying to do it, test it so that it doesn't affect like lower apes and like humans and stuff like that. So that's why they had to try it on chimpanzees to make sure that it wouldn't affect humans or anybody else that isn't basically livestock. And they stole Juba because believe it was was evolved. And even the like staff at the lab even said that they thought that Juba was the missing link. A very nice chimp, very smart. It seemed to have, kind of like that look in its eyes that people thought it was the missing link. So, I mean, I guess that makes it a better test subject. But at the same time, why would you do something so terrible to something that's so smart and apparently so nice?
It's crazy.
Yeah, but then we get some resolution there because Ray was trying to be a pig, dude. He was about to unbuckle the pants, and then his own homie shot him in the head. And that's after Mr. Wiedemeyer shows up and is done being lazy, and he actually goes to help out Ellen.
Lucky enough for Buddy's wife, her kid does escape and makes it home where she can tell the neighbor about the situation. That dude really comes to the rescue while Buddy is tied up at Star Labs dealing with the Bawana Beast. Buddy's pretty pissed off at the scientist, but obviously understands the repercussions of not isolating Bawana Beast and the ape because they're infected. So he sets off to find them. But at the end of the issue, we see the Bawana Beast make it to the San Diego Zoo and lets the ape know that everything's going to be okay, but she may have just passed in front of him.
Oh yeah, she definitely did. Not to be, depressing, but as he's fleeing with what's left of Juba, Myers, the scientist, lets Animal Man know. He's like, well, yeah, obviously the monkeys, the chimp's gonna get sick, and things aren't gonna be so good, and then they obviously are going to die, and it's just like, oh shit. So like they already know that Juba's gonna die no matter what. It's just a matter of how soon. But Buddy has to kind of go to the library, which remember those. He read up on Bawana Beast, which apparently he's got like a book or encyclopedia that includes the Bawana Beast. He's like, I kind of loosely remember him from Crisis when we were on the Monitor's ship. So I don't really remember him being like this though. But Buddy kind of figures it out, and he goes to the zoo to check on the red ape, which is just lying there, and Bawana Beast shows up behind him. And Buddy, he's just like, hey, man, I understand what's going on. I just kind of want to talk to you. And Bawana Beast doesn't want to hear it and just whoops him and just decks him into like a statue or something. And so we start to see them kind of tussle. I mean, obviously, it's the 4th issue, so, we got to see them fight at some point. And while that's going on, Ellen and Maxine, they were able to save the kittens, or so they thought, because their next door neighbor, who they rescued the cat for prior, is like, sorry, they're already dead. And Ellen's kind of going through it because no matter what she tries to save or do, like nothing's really kind of working out the way she hoped it would. She can't really save anyone or anything. And so she's kind of obviously tossed up about that. But as time goes on, we're back with Buddy and the Bawana Beast. He absorbs some chameleon and salamander powers to try and regenerate and also to kind of camouflage and hide from the Bawana Beast, while the Bawana Beast is just running around making whatever kind of animals, which for a dude who loves animals, I don't know how he's so like chill, just combining a bunch of them. Like, I don't know how that works ethically when you're him and you're protecting animals and all that, but
it doesn't look like a painless process either. Like, this dude is ripped and he's just smushing animals together.
Yeah, dude, he's like doing animal Play-Doh. But but he made like this weird like eagle looking thing, like a kind of like a griffin, but not quite. And Buddy has to fight that thing while he's getting, tossed up, but he ended up driving it into the ground and killing it before getting chased by the tiger gorilla hybrid that was also created. So he's not only dealing with the Bwana Beast, who's like out of his weight class, but now he's got like chimera animals attacking him too. All while that's going on, the Bwana Beast is making all the animals go nuts for like miles around, just driving them crazy. And Animal Man had to obviously deck him straight in the face. I believe he absorbed the power of an elephant when he did it too. And he just really, knocked him off his feet. And he's like, oh shit, probably hit him too hard. Because he knows that's just going to piss him off, even though Bwana Beast's already angry. So what's it matter? But like we said, Bwana Beast is like tough as hell. And his like crazy mask and everything else he's got going on started shutting down Buddy's like nervous system. But then Buddy was able to somehow turn it back on him, I think by absorbing those powers somehow. They basically just have like a stare down until Bwana Beast starts coughing up blood because he's got the anthrax disease in him too from, I don't know, getting too close to the corpse of a dead chimp. So he got sick. Because I mean, he did. I didn't see him wash his hands. He probably, he might have might have put his hands in his mouth. Who knows? It might have been off panel. Those germs. We should have wore a mask. But but anywho, that's going on. So obviously, Buonabee's incapacitated. We're back with Ellen and Maxine. The cats are kind of getting buried, and they're told that they're going to cat heaven and all that. And Bwana Beast is dying at the zoo while that's going on. There's just so much subplot. But Bwana Beast gets his own powers used by Animal Man to fix his white blood cells and basically merge everything into a like super powered immune system so that the Bwana Beast doesn't die. And Animal Man doesn't even care to take him to jail. He just healed him, propped him up against a wall, and says, "Okay, see you later." Animal Man's all pissed off. He's going to see Myers. And Myers is like, "Are you stupid, you dumb idiot? We should have brought him in. We can have an epidemic because of you." And Animal Man's just like, "No, dude, it's your fault, your problem. You caused this." He's like, I'm just honestly ashamed to have ever been involved. This work is immoral. This ain't for me." And the dude's just roasting Animal Man. And Animal Man's like, "I'm not going to hit this guy, dude. It's not worth it." And then the dude puts his hand on his shoulder and he just turns around and wallops the dude. And he's like, "You'd think this would help me sleep at night, but it won't." It's just like everyone has their patience tested, and that guy sucked.
Dude has an even worse day later because
yeah, he does.
The Bwana Beast, he brings that ape with him late in the night while the scientist is by himself, and he fuses the two together, as he do. And now this scientist is fused with a dead ape. And so he's like a half living ape, and he gets sent for testing. Like he did all the testing on those animals over the years. And so you see the scientist getting experimented on the first time, which is such a sick way to end this issue. But there's a lot to take from these 4 issues, man. Like you said, this was the perfect kind of villain for Buddy's first time at it as a true superhero. So I thought that was pretty tastefully done, but they also really highlighted the effects of it has on a family, like when your husband's a superhero. And that's kind of like a metaphor, in my opinion, for like first responders, right? Or like, military and veterans and stuff like that. It's just like when you can't be home because you're kind of out saving the world, so to speak, you don't really realize how much kind of goes on at the household and how he's not really able to take care of his family because he's too busy taking care of the world, and everything that bad happens to the family, he kind of doesn't really even have a pulse on, or just doesn't really know about, which is kind of crazy too.
Definitely. And as we mentioned, this is like the main story arc of it. Like I said, I think this was originally intended to be a mini series rather than a full ongoing. So for also just time's sake, and not to go into each, because there are just single one-off issues, at least in the context of our digital reader, just going over maybe the topics of the next few issues, and just mention that. I think we'll wrap up with our review of the thing in general, our rate and review, what we like, what we dislike. But issue 5, a lot of you who are already seasoned to comic fandom, that is, will likely have heard of the Coyote Gospel issue. It's kind of very meta, especially for superheroes. It's got really cool artwork. It's got a nice story. It's a self-contained one issue type deal. That one's a classic. So, I mean, take it from us. That one's definitely a good read. But then we start to see him more in the overarching universe through the other handful of issues at the end. So issue 6 It involves the Thanagarians, however you want to pronounce that. So basically, if you like hawk people, this issue's for you. It's pretty funny. Issue 7, we've got The Tale of the Death of the Red Mask. That one we kind of alluded to a little bit earlier about getting on TV, and we won't spoil that one too much in case you do go
There,
back.
there's an old, chubby, retired supervillain who kind of wants to make one last hurrah, and because he knows he's dying, Animal Man finds him about to jump off a building, and he's like, "You don't have to kill yourself. Like, I'll get you on television. You'll be remembered again." He's like, "Yeah, you know what? That does sound great." And then Buddy's like, "I'll be right back." And then dude just decides to jump off the the rooftop
He says,
anyways and kills
screw
himself.
this.
Yeah, it's a
"Ah, no, baby."
hilarious issue, but I don't want to interrupt too much if you want to keep going with the
No,
recaps on these.
you're all good, brother. But then, yeah, just issue 8 here. It's basically Buddy getting his Justice League Europe card at that time, and then also having a fight with, I believe it's the second Mirror Master, right? But yeah, Mirror Master comes and attacks him in his home. Then, I mean, that's the issue. And then issue 9.
His wife kicks Mirror Master's ass too, which is pretty
Honestly,
fun.
she was more effective than him. And then issue 9 is Martian Manhunter basically coming to pay Buddy a visit because Martian Manhunter likes the cut of his jib and he'd like him on the team regardless.
And they pay for the damages that was caused by Mirror Master in the previous issue when he comes to destroy their house.
Yeah,
Which
does
nice.
rule. So, it would take us forever to go over these individually. I mean, they are single issues, but at the same time, it's just a lot of good character moments. Like, if you can relate to the Animal Man, there's definitely some silly jokes up in there. It's pretty funny. And, a lot of what he's going through and stuff like that, not only the superheroics, but are, fairly relatable to most people. But with that said, what are you going to give us as our rating and review here? What are you giving it?
9 out of 10. It was so relatable, so fun, blast from the past. I wasn't even really familiar with the artist, but the artist made it so simple and easy to enjoy as well as the writing. Obviously, you guys know I'm a big Grant Morrison fan, so nailed it. I definitely recommend anybody read this first volume. I do wish it was the whole volume was in light of those first 4 issues. Like you could definitely run that for 9 issues and it could be even like a 9.5 to a 10 that way. But just because a lot of it was like filler for other DC stuff after issue 4, I can't give it anything more than a 9. I could even see an 8.5 being reasonable, but I'm just such a big Animal Man fan. It's one of the reasons I'm into comics. And also shout out Nicole, my fiance. She got me a first Animal Man for Christmas this year, so thank you. And thank you, Burger, for putting this on our recommended read list. How about you, Burger? What would you rate it?
Actually, I'm going with 8.5, like you mentioned, and that's more so, yeah, just to the structure of the story. With more than half of it technically just being one-offs, which I do enjoy, but typically I'm so used to reading, maybe 1 to 2 self-contained, story arcs in one of these. And that I liked each individual issue, but my scale probably needs revision and stuff like that over time too. But as you've heard, we both co-signed Grant Morrison and their work. Basically anything that Grant has written, we're generally fans of. The art was fantastic. I'm not entirely sure what else the art team has worked on. I should look into that a little bit deeper, but I really liked, especially for conveying the story and kind of, it was pretty evocative of the times, like, kind of how the art and story felt. So it was very good in that regard. It's always been a cool character we like. He's got a really cool power set, and it was good to, kind of expand across like a really good base character and kind of flesh them out and make them more personable and relatable for current readers.
Yeah, the style of the art did match the story and the time in which it also came out. So, no, very fun reading that. And also, I guess I didn't realize before reading this how powerful Animal Man can be, especially when he helped Wannabe survive an illness.
Yeah, I had no idea he was capable of all that.
Yeah, but that's all we got, guys. Burger, do you want to give them our recap and tell them what we're going to be doing next episode?
Yeah, so next time we're going to be doing a DC Trinity episode. For those of you who don't know, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. This is going to be like a project report. We're going to, work on that. We're going to bring up topics relative to those three characters from the past, from the future, from the present. We're going to put together a little project there. We're going to discuss them next time. And you guys know where to catch us. You can catch us on Instagram at CBJ Pod, on Facebook at CBJ Podcast. You can find us on YouTube, any of the podcast platforms. If you can't find us any of those ways, I would say go to Google, type in Comic Book Junkies Podcast, and you'll see our big, beautiful, smiling faces. Plenty of CBJ backlog at your fingertips. We'll have books on our page. We'll have everything, dude. Just keep looking us up. More and more stuff will keep popping up. The backlog, our books, everything like that. You can hit us up. We have an email that's on all of our handles too. You can hit that right through our social media if you want to shout us out directly. You got something to ask us. You got a problem with us. You
Take
can
it up
still
with
voice
Joe.
that opinion. Yeah, take it up with Joe. I'll probably read the email, but then I'll text him and I'll be like, this person's got a problem with you. And he's going to say, you don't want to know what he's going to say. So don't even try us. But we appreciate you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Later, Gator.